In the last section, we wrote out a little bit of code to watch this input element, and every time a user adds some input, we are calling listen right now, and just printing out the value of the input itself. Now, the way in which we're going to work with this value and validate it is actually going to be almost identical to how we put together our cake factory before. Notice how inside this event object right here, the event object has a ton of data tied to it probably, but you and I only care about the property of event.target.value. And so that's actually very similar back to our factory. Where's that diagram? Come on, right here. So back in our factory, when that event or that order came into our stream, we had the order inspector that said, I don't care about this whole big object. All we care about is that type property. And so it's very similar to the situation we are now in. We don't care about the entire event object. We just care about the target.value property. So we're going to first add on a map function to that stream, and we're going to strip out just event.target.value. So back over here, I'm going to remove the .listen statement because we now have a better idea of what we're actually working with here. And I'll replace it with map. So this will be called with the event object. And from here, we're going to return event.target.value. So now we're just working with that singular text value out of the input. Now, the next step we're going to want to do, we're going to want to look at that value and decide whether or not it is an email address. So does that sound kind of familiar at all? Kind of like some validation of sorts? Well, that step is actually identical to this cake step we had over here. We want to look at the value of whatever we just got back from the map function, and we want to either say, okay, yep, this looks good, or we want to raise some sort of error. And so we're going to again create a stream transformer that's going to look at that incoming value and then either just add that value back into the stream or add in an error message instead. So back over inside of Dartpad, I'm going to again make a stream transformer object. So I'm going to declare a new variable. I'll call this thing validator because that's pretty much what it's doing. It's validating to make sure that we have a correct email address. I'll do new stream transformer from handlers. And then inside of here, I will pass in the named value or named property of handle data. That's going to be a function that gets called with not necessarily our event per se. Probably not the best thing to put it on there. We'll say this is something more like input value because that's what it now is since it's gone through this map function right here. And then as a second argument, we'll receive the sync. So now we'll look at the input value and we'll say if this contains an @ symbol, then great. Let's take the sync and add the input value back into the thing. Everyone's happy. Otherwise, we'll look at the sync and we'll add an error and say enter a valid email. So now if you do not properly add in an @ symbol inside the input value or inside of this actual input right here, then we're going to add in an error message to the stream instead. And you'll notice we got the red underline right here. It's because we have not correctly imported the async module from Dart. So at the very top, I'll add on import Dart : async like so. And then I should see those errors go away. Okay, so now let's make sure that we wire up this validator to our stream. So after we do the mapping step, I'll add on a transform. And I want to run everything that comes through our stream through this validator transform. Okay, looks good. Let's take one more pause. We'll come back in the next section and we'll wire up the last step, which is going to be our listen function.